Good morning, and thank you all for starting your day with us. My name is Rachel Zamsky. I am the marketing specialist at Aqueduct Technologies. I am personally very excited about our topic today and to hear Rick and our guests share their insights from their experiences at Cisco Live last week. Just a few quick notes before we start. This call is being recorded, and if you have any questions at any time, just type them into the Q&A box, and I'll be sure to get those answered for you. All right, Rick, why don't you introduce yourself and our guest for today?
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. Hey, good morning, everybody. I am Rick Beaupre, and this is our monthly coffee chat series. This month, I am joined by two incredible engineers that joined me at Cisco Live. Folks, why don't you introduce yourself? Matt, you can start.
Hey everybody, my name is Matt Albark. I am the Director of Professional Services at Aqueduct Technologies. Been here for about 10 and a half years. Got my CCIE security last year and was really excited for Cisco Live this year, looking at all the topics, AI, security, XDR, Hypershield, all that good stuff. So excited to kind of jump in. Gerard?
And Gerard, yeah.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Super excited to be on my first coffee chat and join the AQ crew. My name is Gerard Cavalinas. I am a network and security engineer here at Aqueduct. I've been here about 5 months or so. Love it and growing in my role. I'm also the founder of Tech House 570, Tech House Media. We make content, help the next generation of IT professionals. So, we can keep that moving and grow this industry to the amazing heights it's at. I love Cisco Live this year, especially because I finally got to really dive into Cisco ICE, what it's about. A ton of great takeaways. I got to meet Catherine McNamara, also focusing a lot on Meraki and ICE integration. So plus some network automation sprinkled in there. So it was super exciting for me.
I love that we have our superstars. Like for me, it's Aaron Woolen. Like we have our own superstars.
Yeah,
Yeah. You guys
There.
have another distinction that's really cool too. Cisco Insider Champions. Matt, can you give a little bit background about that?
Sure, yeah. I actually found the champion program through Gerard a couple of years ago through his content and kind of seeing what he was sharing on LinkedIn. And it's a really kind of tight-knit, close community with hundreds and hundreds of IT professionals in the Cisco community, from the partner side, from the customer side, kind of all over the place, from all over the world. That is a group of people that gets to come together and share insights, gain access to information before the rest of the world gets to. In many cases, you get product briefings, the ability to connect with experts, things like that. There's a podcast series that's run through the program as well. So that's been a fantastic experience for me. I've been a member for I think 3 years now. Being able to be a member of that community and meet so many excellent people, talk to experts from across the industry, being able to kind of meet up with people when we go to events like Cisco Live or Engage and all those sorts of things. So it's a really it's a great program that I'm thrilled to be a part of.
Yeah, that's great. Gerard was like the mayor there because he knows
Yep.
everybody in the insider program and, from that aspect of it. So awesome. Welcome, you guys. I am so excited to be doing this with you. Let's kind of dive into it because I think from this one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this was one of the better Cisco Lives. There was a lot of energy there. We saw a lot of new things and integrations and everything, but it didn't feel like we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. It felt like everything was thought out. Do you guys take that same takeaway from that? Gerard, let's start with you.
I really did. And don't get me wrong, every year Cisco Live, that's it, right? Like anybody goes to Cisco Live, it's the main event, it's the big deal. Not just from the performers, but more so from the content, from what it is, the technologies you're learning in so many different disciplines and areas. And the cool part about the energy this year was, as I'm sure we all know, the hot word AI, right? It really focused and dived into, the Splunk acquisition, how that's going to be eventually, well, not eventually, as it's happening right now in real time, inevitably baked into all of Cisco security portfolio. So for me, it was definitely there was more energy there. You could definitely feel the keynotes were even stronger than the year before. So I thought there was a ton of great takeaways from it.
Yeah, what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the energy was, I mean, this was my fifth or sixth one, I think. So I've been several times, but the energy this year was big. I feel like the vision that Cisco has is kind of gaining momentum, right, with their kind of SOC of the future and like all the other sorts of things that they've been kind of talking about for a couple of years. It felt like it's becoming more and more cohesive. I think the Splunk acquisition was a big thing. Obviously, everybody was really interested to see what was going to be talked about there. I had a great time personally. I made a focus this year to spend more time in the World of Solutions, which is the expo floor for anybody who hasn't been. That's where the vendors are and the DevNet theaters and all kinds of stuff. Might get, smaller format lectures and all that. I made a point to spend more time there than I usually do, and I think I really enjoyed it. The interpersonal networking I got out of it was really fantastic. Meeting up with people to have random discussions or like CCIE kind of mentorship sessions or whatever the case may be. I did a lot more capture the flag this year, which, as some of you may know, is my favorite event at Cisco Live.
We do know that.
It's tons of fun. I do that every year, but I did even more this year. I did a couple of the walk-in labs, so it was really a lot of fun. I agree, the energy was big. The excitement was there, more so than it typically is. And kind of, Gerard, to your point, I mean, Cisco Live is it's the event, right? I don't know if it's the largest IT conference in the world, but it's got to be up there if it's not, right? And it certainly felt like it this year for sure. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I was a little, let's jump into AI. When I first saw a lot of it and was walking in, I was like, oh, here we go, more AI.
Mhm.
But when you went into the AI hub and you saw how thoughtful they're doing everything, you're like, oh, okay, this is different. What'd you guys take on that AI introduction and how they went about it?
It felt intentional, right? It's very easy to say AI. Look, we've got
Yeah.
AI. My Nest thermostat has AI, like whatever, right? It's
Yeah.
easy. It's a buzzword. I want to see what the stock price does, how many times I say AI. But that didn't really feel like what was going on here. It felt more intentional and not like, we're gonna take the AI assistant for WebEx, for example, right? We're gonna put more AI into WebEx. What does that mean? Well, it's not going to just be WebEx is going to somehow now be a robot that solves all of your issues. It's little iterative things that actually make a difference. I was messing around with it yesterday. You can rewrite your messages. So if you write a message and you're like, I don't know if I like the tone of that, is this going to come off rude? You can tell it, I want this to be casual and friendly, and have it rewrite it for you. Things like that, and it will actually change the tonality of what you're saying. I think, Rick, you pointed out the other day, if you're 15 minutes late to a meeting, it'll actually give you a meeting recap via AI, right? So you're not missing things. It'll capture key takeaways. And this isn't just like a voice to text, like dictation thing. It's more than that. It is actually interpreting the information and trying to get actionable intelligence out of it, which is pretty interesting. And that's just, I mean, that's one example. And there's others that we'll talk about too, I'm sure. But that I thought it was kind of an interesting example of I think what Cisco's, crawl, walk, run approach to it is, which I think is the smartest way to go. It's really easy for any company to just be like, we're just going to buy AI and put it in our stuff. But is that meaningful ultimately if you do it that way?
I don't know if it was you or Rick or maybe both of you in one of our conversations you had mentioned too. There's like the things I've seen. I've never got to test it yet, but there's things I've seen in WebEx where as part of that chat recap, like if your name was mentioned or you came up, I think it doesn't it notify you that like, hey, you were part of this conversation or you were brought up, and then it's part of that recap, which like that's insane, right? Like I mean, AI has always been a cool thing. I remember, you watch those movies from like the 80s and 90s and like the futuristic, but like we're here, right? Like AI is really taking over. It's forming more of a generative, competency mentally, and it shows throughout all these different disciplines and technologies. Like I think that's amazing. So
Well,
you're
Gerard,
always gonna be ahead.
to your point, I don't think it was intrusive, right? That was so one of the things with
Yeah.
AI, I think it could be intrusive, right?
Yeah.
And with the WebEx thing, being mentioned, it wasn't intrusive. It's like, hey, you were mentioned in this meeting. So, oh, okay, let me see what they needed from me from there. And it felt like it was in a workflow rather than, hey, Rick, this is your
Well,
thing.
hey, we're watching you. Like, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
That's a really good point, I think, right? It's not this thing where it's like, now WebEx is going to be rebranded as like AI Teams or some nonsense. Like it's just an add-on that's there to just help and be useful. And that I think is the right approach. That was what I took from that and a lot of the other stuff that we kind of saw, right?
And I think they're doing that as we get into more of the product announcements. I think they're doing that with all the products. I mean, do you guys agree when we were looking at the different products, how they were doing it? It didn't seem intrusive. It seemed like it was a natural workflow.
Yeah.
Like let's use Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the full stack observability, right? And we were talking about, let's kind of jump into Splunk. When I was working with AppD and the Splunk integration, right now it's just a button, right? So we get it. They're trying to integrate it as fast as they can. But what was interesting is when you clicked on the button to learn more, it took all the artifacts with it.
Yeah.
To me, that is amazing that they were able to do that. One, using open telemetry thing, which was great, and two, grabbing the machine learning and the AI to be able to pull that across again into that workflow, right?
Well, that's the benefit, right? You don't want features for the sake of features. You want features that are going to bring value and make the intelligence actionable. And like with something like security and XDR and threat hunting and all those things, where you can be dealing with so many attributes that are changing by the second or less, right? It's really important that you gather what you have and you can actually do something with it. So having a system that can read into that is super powerful, and it's only I think it's only going to grow as time goes on. And there's just, I mean, they have more intelligence data than any other vendor, right? So being able to take that and combine that with a strong AI ML background, I think it's gonna help things. And even on the flip side, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
Oh no, go ahead, Nat. No, there was just some. I said this. This was last year. I was on a podcast, and I've done other pieces of media. This is the crazy part: is that when 2023 ended and 2024 began,
Mhm.
the same people. That's why the Splunk acquisition, it made sense, because not only does it show why Cisco's proactive, but the same people that are using this to combat the threats, that the same people, the bad guys, are leveraging AI too, right? Like,
Right.
we're seeing a lot more advanced ransomware attacks,
Mhm.
bad threat actors, but they're leveraging AI. So that's why, for me, understanding both sides, it just was like a no-brainer to do that. I apologize. Let's get off, my friend.
No, and
No,
to your point though, it's about visibility.
Yeah.
Right. So I think what Cisco's done for us is given us a wider visibility. So when you see those advanced attacks you were talking about, Gerard, you're right, we can see them and start reacting to them accordingly, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what's happening in there.
Yeah.
you
Now
have
it's
to.
not the same as 2020. It's different now.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to. This isn't just like, oh yeah, botnets. That's still a thing, but it's a lot different now. Like the threat
Yeah.
landscape and those sorts of attacks, it's very different. I mean, generative malicious code, all these sorts of things that are out there. It's important you can't just be reactive to that. You
Mhm.
don't have time to wait 6 days for the vendor to come out with a patch for that vulnerability for a 0 day that's already eating your IP, right? Like you don't have time for that anymore. So being able to get ahead of that and do better predictive analysis against those sorts of things, I think is super helpful. And then even on the other side, in Splunk in particular, what I thought was pretty interesting on the ITSI part of the product
It-
in that workflow, the configuration assistant,
Yeah.
right? Which is really, really cool. Being
Yeah.
able to optimize your thresholds, optimize your log ingestion or whatever based on actual data in real time. And this isn't just the same 10-year-old heuristics engine that every sim has ever had. This is more predictive analysis it's doing a better job, and it's going to get stronger and stronger as time goes on, right? So
And
I thought a lot of those things were
to your
interesting.
point, Matt, we always talk about alert fatigue.
Hmm.
And it was
Yeah.
Yeah,
thoughtful the way they did that, right? So you're not getting alert fatigue. You're getting information that matters to you,
right.
categorized, right? And that to me was like a game changer.
You have to, because you're getting so much information. If everything can't be a P0, right? We say it all
Yeah.
the time. If everything's a P0, nothing is. So you have to understand what is actually important, what's really a threat, and what you're really looking at. And these sorts of things, I agree. It's a thoughtful is a good word. It's a thoughtful way to try and wrap this into kind of existing products.
I'll tell folks that are on this chat today, and if they hear the recording, if you ever get a chance to go to Cisco Live or RSA and you go to the Cisco security tower wall and you see real live threat feeds, coming in and what's going on in the world, it is mind blowing. This thing is probably 16 different screens and it has all the different telemetries and everything that is going on and how bad it is out there. It's just, a wake up, right? You go through and you're in your happy little bubble and you look over and you're like, oh my God.
It's
Gives you
crazy.
it gives you heart palpitations.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
You're
does.
like,
Well,
what
think
the?
about how many customers did we hear about getting breached with ransomware 10 years ago versus
Oh
today?
yeah.
right.
You know what I mean? Like across the globe. It's crazy, and it's not because the attackers are using the same attacks, right? And so we got to be using better intelligence, because it's the volume and the creativity is only increasing, right? So we have to be able to deal with that.
And I think you were talking about observability and the AI. Let's talk about Hypershield for a second, because that, it's not a product, right? But it's a technology. The platform in the cloud protection suite is kind of doing that, right? It's kind of taking all of those things that are Splunkish from the cloud, right?
Yeah, it seems like a pretty interesting, an interesting kind of platform is a good way to put it, because it's not. I think there's a little ambiguity with the way the announcement came out still, but that's because it's early in its evolution, right? I look at this as an evolution of, we're going to do some interesting things with the Splunk acquisition, start being able to actually use this information, take the kinds of ideas that we have for the XDR platform, where we're going to be able to do generative modeling and predictive kind of analysis and orchestration and those sorts of things, and then taking those ideas and evolving the existing idea of tetration, also known as secure workload, right? And what secure workload can already do, and has been able to do for a while, is that's an agent-based piece of software with a head end that sits on your machines in your environment, and can do micro, even sort of like nano segmentation based on the applications that live there and how they behave, the services, what they're actually connecting to in the machine, external to the machine, all that sort of stuff, right? And when you take that and the Hypershield offering, from what I understood at least, it looks like it's basically starting with those tetration agents. And I think they have a VM component to it too. If you guys, I think that's what I read.
Yeah.
But it's going to take that and be able to do a cool thing about tetration and those other that kind of field of product, right? Is that it's able to dynamically understand what's going on and then say, here's the policy we suggest for you. That's really powerful, because macro segmentation is one thing. You can do that manually. All my printers go on this VLAN. All my IoT goes here. These people go here. These people go here. Okay, now what about the individual applications on their computer? How do you know what marketing needs to access on the network specifically? How do you know what finance needs to talk to specifically? What ports do they need on the what application? All that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's hard to do. That you can do it, but that's very difficult to do. Having an application being able to help tell you some of that stuff makes it a lot easier to understand those flows without having to go and set up NetFlow on every endpoint in your network and all that kind of stuff. Taking that idea, combining that with AI and automation from the other kinds of areas that they're already experimenting with, right? And taking that same kind of Splunkish idea and being able to say, we're going to automate this policy for you, not only on the endpoints, but we're also going to be able to have you install this on VMs, on dedicated DPUs, on smart switches, on other areas of your network. So yeah, exactly. So for these hyperscale networks where you have, just white box AI generation machines that are in people's environments, for these very large networks, you're able to deal with securing intercommunication with, between cloud environments, intercommunication between Kubernetes clusters, all that kind of stuff. And it's able to automate the whole process for you and do that prescriptive kind of predictive analysis on the traffic, tell you what the policies probably should be. This is what these things are talking to. Here's how you can secure this. Oh, there's a 0-day that just hit this update for this particular piece of code that we saw, you're accessing these ports and we know that's vulnerable. Vendor hasn't been able to patch this yet. We'll put a compensating control in automatically on top of that to stop you from being vulnerable to that until you can patch it. Because we all know when a vulnerability comes out, we can patch right away, right? No, not at all.
Always.
Not at all. It always takes, you've got the cab cycles and you've got this in the end. It's 3 weeks later and you're finally patched, and how much of your IP was stolen in that time. Right. So being able to block it right away, using, again, going back to the kind of intentional, thoughtful use of AI, the way they were talking about it, I thought that was pretty powerful stuff. What about you, Gerard? I know you thought it was interesting too.
It was very interesting. And don't get me wrong, all the keynotes were, but that really had my attention, and I'll tell you why. Because there was 3 areas that they had focused on, right? Anonymous segmentation, distributed exploit protection, and self-qualifying updates. While all 3 of those are key and important, segmentation and updates resonated with me, and I'll explain why. Because in my career, right, coming from, this is over the last, how many years, from help desk to the admin roles to the engineering roles, separating that data is hard in itself. Like, that's a problem. It's never easy. It doesn't matter whether it's a laptop or an infrastructure that's infected. Like at both ends of the medium, you're going to see that patching is hard because there's also certain devices now, like years ago, you'd have to worry about patching drones because again, but with a lot of the way those chipsets are designed, as well as the CPUs, they're also susceptible to breaches. So how do you patch something like that? I've never patched a drone, like so there's a lot more advanced capabilities. There's a lot more there's a lot more meat there to chew on. And with that too, this AI based engine is pretty cool because it allows you to leverage, it gives you such a granular insight, which I thought was cool. Like it used, for example, the log4j CVE, right? And it went ahead, okay, so is there a threat running in your memory? Is there a threat running in your CPU? Does it target that high value asset? And then where is the key focus points from there? Like you said, it puts in that compensation agent and it allows you to, give it some time. You know what I mean? Plus, if it's an app or something, you can work as long as you're working with your dev or tools team to let you know, okay, hey, that patch is good now. It'll remove that agent for you. It self removes it, and then they begin to patch. So it really, for me, it resonated with me because again, at any level, and I've been at so many different levels, and you've seen it. And you wish you had these tools 10 years ago.
Right.
Like I wish I had something that could have stopped it, or not shoot up all my IPs. But that was just what it was. So Hypershield for me was definitely one of the ones on my list. I'm still going to be keeping an eye out, but like y'all said, it's so early on right now. I know that's kind of where their focus is. So I want to see more how it plays out over the next few months.
Gonna be
Yeah,
hot.
they
Yeah.
said what G2, so more of August, September timeframe. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be more. Yeah.
More integrations coming. It was funny going back to your log4j comment when Tom made the log5j comment in the keynote and like the whole room went silent. Like, please no. That was funny.
Yeah, who wants to live through that again, right?
Right. Oh,
Oh
man, what a
my
nightmare.
God.
Yeah.
God.
But back to the compensated control, to me, that was the game changer. Again, being
Yeah.
a security professional, I was like, all right, that's the one thing I took away from it. Like, I like that. And then, like you said,
Yeah.
Gerard, once that patch is there, it can remove the control from there.
We can't patch you, but we have something, a placeholder to
Yeah.
stop any more of the infection or the threat from I'll take it. Like that's huge.
That kind of stuff is the only way to scale. Like a lot of CVEs,
Yeah.
you'll see they'll have workarounds, right? Okay, hey, your ASA, your FTD, your whatever is vulnerable if it's got this. Here's what you can do to fix it, though. Change this to that, or like whatever, right? You'll have those sorts of things. Okay, cool. You know what to do. Now go do it. You have 500 firewalls across the world. Good
Yeah.
luck, right?
Yeah.
Like
gotta be
you're not gonna,
scalable.
you can't do that right away with something like this. That even if you can do it quickly, even if you have your own inbuilt automation or centralized management or whatever, you can't do that instantly. With something like this, you can do that a lot closer to instantly because it's got this umbrella and essentially like a CDN kind of thing to it, being cloud-based, right? Being a SaaS that's going to be able to reach down and touch everything with equilateral sorts of access. It's pretty interesting. And that's, again, I think the way to be thinking about that sort of stuff. I think that was a lot of the message, right? That thoughtfulness, keeping the ethics of AI in mind. That was a lot of what the talk was, particularly from the ELT, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. It's more of, like you said, the thoughtfulness of it, but it's in, again, back to the workflow, right? It's a workflow rather than just sitting back and letting AI go ahead, fix my network. Right.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
not what they did from approach. So for some vendors, AI will do everything in here. Cisco's approach was, this is a tool we're going to enable in our devices and in our software to increase your visibility in your workflow. You use it from there. It's not, I didn't catch that it was going to replace this or replace that, because we hear that a lot.
Yeah, and I think when you hear stuff like that, that's a red flag, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We're gonna have self-driving cars. We don't need streetlights anymore. Like that's not how any of that works. You know what I mean? You can't. Okay, we have AI that's gonna build your networks out. Well, we don't need network engineers anymore. You don't need a staff. That's
We're
not
gonna have Rosie from the Jetsons. I mean, you'll
good
hear
luck, right?
everything. Like what?
Yeah, it's not how this stuff works. It's important to like we're the underpinnings of how it all works is still very human driven, and it's still very at the core of everything, and it's going to remain that way, right? So we need to look at this as a tool in the tool belt and not a a silver bullet to solve all the problems, because it never will be. It can't be. That's just, and no matter what state it's in 10,000 years in the future, things just don't evolve that way, the way the complexity works, right? It's just not how these sorts of things operate.
Yeah, and it was so cool watching Cisco being hardware centric all the time, pivot to being software centric, and
Yeah.
the hardware is going to be the vehicle to get you there. And the way they went about it, I think, was pretty remarkable. A lot of times you see people stumble when they do that kind of stuff. I'm looking at you, Broadcom, right? When you switch from hardware to software, but Cisco it did it in such a way that you could just see that they have their train cars as the hardware, and then how things are categorized into it was really done well. One of the things I want to talk and kind of pivot a little was we always hear about covering the ground, the cloud, right? Well, Cisco said, how about the cloud to the ground as well? So there's a two-way visibility thing going on, which I think is amazing. And Gerard, I know you took classes on the SD-WAN, the Catalyst Meraki integrations. You want to talk about that a little bit? And again, there's some AI involved in that, but it was, to me, again, back visibility, visibility was what I took away from it.
Yeah. And anytime, listen, I've been saying this, I don't know, since the last few years. Anytime you have Catalyst and Meraki, it goes together like bread and butter, right? I
Yeah.
feel like it was inevitable, those two, because Catalyst has such dedicated, streamlined, powerful hardware. And then Meraki, with that cloud-based monitoring and all their solutions, sort of marry them two together was kind of imperative. But with their new Fabric Interconnect, what really got me excited was the fact that it focuses on three simple things. It has the top tier in simplicity, maintain security at the highest level, and then you can scale it, which again, you need that in any type of infrastructure you have.
Hmm.
There was a lot of different things I found too with the SSE solution that was really cool. You're gonna have access to be able to granularly take a look at more traffic monitoring, inspection. You can look at all web traffic because it's leveraging what was it? The well, no, well, it wasn't Splunk, but it was part of that AI capability. And I apologize, I can't remember the name of it, but it was also based off of the Cisco Talos engine, which is powering it, which
Mhm.
I thought was interesting too, because they're leveraging their own proprietary like AI to make sure you have a kind of a well-rounded SASE solution. So I thought that was some pretty cool takeaways from that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the way they in the Catalyst Center kind of way,
Yeah.
how you can view all your devices on a network is again going to give you that intelligence. Matt, I think I stepped on you.
No, no, you're good. I mean, it plays into a couple of things. You mentioned, Rick, this, Cisco pivoting almost from a hardware company to a software company more so
Yeah.
in the last few years. I think the Catalyst Meraki stuff is a really good example of that. And you combine that with kind of the Cisco Security Cloud vision, which is just sort of starting right. We're kind of unifying all these not just like unifying the portals is not the right way to say it. That undercuts what it's really trying to do, I think, long term. But being able to pull in the insights, we had SecureX and now XDR, which pulls in insights from your security products. Well, now being able to pull in all these additional products and unify them, I think, is really interesting. And when we talk about Catalyst and Meraki, specifically Meraki being a cloud-driven platform, obviously. We started to see, in my opinion, that pivot to this more software focused sort of thing even a few years ago. I think back whatever it was 3 years ago or so when they first announced the monitoring in Meraki for Catalyst. And then
Yeah.
we began also seeing, hey, you've got the Cisco 9K access point, you want it to be Catalyst or Meraki. We're effectively white boxing hardware now, and you can put whatever personality you want on it. And we're seeing that now with the 9300Ms. That like there's more stuff where these platforms are kind of converging, right? And I think that plays into their overall story of flexibility. Of you can monitor it in the cloud, you can monitor it on prem. We're going to have observability for it and security for it, regardless of where you put it. The security can be as close to the box as you want, basically, right? To be able to deal with securing your workloads and your endpoints and the box itself and all these other things. So I think it's pretty interesting. The Meraki Catalyst monitoring story and that convergence is a real, I personally, I think, is a really interesting one. I know you guys do too. I've been watching that very closely for the
Hmm.
last couple of years. I've been fairly vocal about my opinions on it too. I think it's awesome. So
Well, how about Gerard brought this up, the Catalyst and how good it was in the Meraki. How about the intelligence that they're bringing,
Yeah.
adaptive group policies? right? How
Yeah.
long have we been waiting for that? Right?
It works, and
Right?
it's very cool. And now they're wrapping that into the new flavor of the XDR platform too, right? Being
Exactly.
able to tie the MXs and the Meraki platform as a whole into what XDR is able to do, and tie those the alerting and the observables and all that stuff together,
Yeah,
right? So now
like
we have that all in one place.
all those branches, all those additional arms are starting to come out because they know they have the capabilities, they know they have the hardware to run it on. It's almost like an accelerator. So it just makes sense to just keep expanding that, pushing that portfolio and adding to it.
Yeah, and they did make a recent addition to the portfolio as well, right, Gerard? Didn't you did a whole session
Oh,
on part of it, as I know you're
that's
excited.
yeah, they did. And you know something? It's really cool. So Meraki, everybody knows, the MX series has been killing it for the last few years. Well, they just announced, and I was also part of this through it's another event in itself as a part of Cisco Live. I was a Tech Field Day delegate, which whole other thing. Definitely recommend checking that out. Always a ton of great content there for IT practitioners, but it was the MX 650. So what this was designed for from a hardware perspective, which we're coming back, because we've been saying they're software based, but this is definitely a hardware based. It's
Mm.
it's it's completely designed as a VPN concentration for larger VPN topologies. Now, again, this can work at any enterprise level, but it was designed for specifically more so tailored to data centers. And the reason why is because as you're seeing a lot of those larger topologies, you're having issues. You want to make sure that you can have a much more robust solution available for you. Now, the cool part about this is that it's only supported right now in VPN concentrator mode. I think there was a 25 gig uplink, and it has traditional Meraki features like layer free firewall rules, IPsec VPN, all that good stuff. But the performance itself has literally like quadrupled 5 times. And the crazy part about this too is that you're going to see how it works. There's actually somewhere, maybe I could drop it in the chat, or if somebody has questions, it acts almost like it can be configured like a hub, right? And then
Hmm.
all the tunnels the branches can be terminated from that, and you can just have a secondary one, has like a warm spare set there. And then I know this is going to excite people, but there's no additional licensing required. So you can just keep adding these. Configuring is just, you have 2-3 step process, same as Meraki always is, and it's very seamless. It's
Mm.
not hard. You can drop it in and then just start connecting the rest of the devices to it.
Yeah,
That for me was exciting because especially, don't get me wrong, I love the MX series, but you don't have something that really targets or focuses on a lot of VPN issues or for those bigger ones, and then there's no real way to scale it. Meraki heard that, and they're like, okay, so this is what they came out with. Now again, that VPN concentrator mode, it's almost like the phase, same as the Catalyst Meraki. It's only in this phase now. In Q2, Q3, you're going to be hearing a lot more of like, okay, well, we could add these additional features to it. So that's still early, but I thought it was really cool. And I'm not gonna lie, they also brought one to physically see. I'm a physical. I need to actually hold something in my hands or something tangible, and I thought it was just so cool. I mean, the
I,
way they're
I
just
heard
changing
you
it.
talking about Tech Field Day. I'm like, Geekapalooza. So not only you're at Cisco Live, but then you had Tech Day. I don't know how you were able to survive that, because that was
I
a
gotta.
lot of good stuff.
It was, man. I gotta learn how to like split myself into two or something. I don't know. Be here, be there.
Gerard
Yeah.
knows everybody. We had like front row seats for all the keynotes. We went up on stage and got a picture with Chuck Robbins, all that stuff,
Oh,
all
he's the
because of this
mayor
guy.
there. That was amazing. So I was like, yeah, you told me that Gerard knows a lot of people. I'm like, well, define a lot of people.
Well,
Well, 5 days
there
later, I know
you go.
what a lot of people means.
But
Yeah.
kind of to your point, man, with the 650 and the throughput, I think it's an interesting thing, right? Because you get 5x throughput. Okay, cool, yeah, more throughput. What that is though, like between the lines, that's the platform for
Yeah,
we're going to be shipping a lot more information from this to other systems, and we need the horsepower to do that. We're going to be
yeah,
pinning this into XDR. We're going to be pinning this into AI-enabled platforms. We're going to be shipping these things to Splunk, SIMs, all that kind of stuff, and having the processing power there to do that that's the underpinning for tomorrow's networks or whatever buzzwords you want to tie to it. Like that's the idea,
right.
right? Is you need the juice to be able to actually push that stuff. So I think it's a welcome update to that whole platform for sure. The VPN concentrator idea has been around for a bit, but that one with that kind of throughput, um, definitely targeting a broader market, larger areas of kind of the data center networks, that sort of thing, like you said.
Mhm.
And again, going after this general vision of we've got hyperscale networks, we have customers doing like NVIDIA based deployments where they're building their own generative AI stuff on prem and all this other kind of stuff. And it's a different animal. That's not your normal compute where, yeah, I've got my NFS file share and 15 servers. Like this other hyperscale data center stuff is a totally different thing. Which it's funny that another announcement they had was they actually announced the CCDE for AI infrastructure, right? Which is an expert level design exam for AI infrastructure
I didn't
because
hear that. Interesting.
it's pretty new, but it's I think it's really interesting. It's again a piece of like this is where they're investing their time because they're recognizing, up front that like again these networks are not built the same way. This is not your traditional type of data center. It doesn't work the same way. You don't have DPUs in a regular data center, right? These sorts of things. So it's pretty interesting. And they had a couple announcements with NVIDIA as well, right? Where they have what's it called? The Nexus, the Hyperfabric for AI clusters, right? That's a whole other piece of products suite that they're going after, where they're partnering with NVIDIA to allow more intelligent compute that is easier to configure for these hyperscale data center architectures. Is really pretty interesting. And that combined with, we're talking about expert level training on how to design this stuff, like they really are going all in on being ahead of the curve for these networks that are getting built, whether you are going to, participate in it willingly or not. It's going to be part of what people are doing. Maybe some customers will just ship all these things to SaaS, but others are going to build these things. And either way, SaaS isn't just like a magic thing, right? Those computers that are running that stuff just live somewhere else. So those and end up being the customers that need to deal with this hyperscale stuff. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because we haven't even gotten to, the private AI things that folks are going to do in their networks, and that has to be low latency, those kinds of things. And we'll have a whole separate coffee chat on large language models and small language models, but there's a whole thing going on now with Copilot that you can do private Copilot in your own organization, and that's going to continue to grow. So if you don't have hyperscale infrastructure, that is going to really cause you some issues if you start doing in-house private AI. And I think that is a thing we haven't even seen yet because, there's a lot of intellectual property protections that you have to do. So having that internal AI or private AI, things like Copilot or, whatever's out there is going to be important to your organization. We got a couple more minutes as we wrap up from here. I want to leave some time for some questions. Any last minute thoughts? Let's start with you, Gerard.
No, like I said, for me, Cisco Live this year was, it really took it to a whole new level from the AI to the Splunk to, I mean, there wasn't one note that it didn't hit on. I just fired on all cylinders, and I was really fortunate to get to, like I said, come there with y'all, work as a team, really get to see Cisco Live from a whole different perspective. And I'm not gonna lie, there was some fun stuff. Capture the flags, Mr. Matt Albright, thank you, because I never got to do one. Like it was just a whole new experience. Cisco Live this year was definitely one for the books, and there's a lot of cool stuff with Splunk and AI. It's been coming down, so be on the lookout.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Like even when I went over to DevNet playing with the open telemetry,
Isn't that
like
cool?
just having it there was phenomenal, and just the things that you could do. Matt, what's your wrap up on this?
Yeah, I mean, I always plug CTF, Capture the Flag, go play Capture the Flag. If anybody did attend Cisco Live and they didn't get a chance to do Capture the Flag, check it out. It's usually available for like a week or so afterwards. You can still do the missions, still capture the stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff is a ton of fun. You learn a lot doing it. Even, I've been working with some of those products for close to a decade, and I was still like, oh wow, that's cool. I didn't know I could do that. So it's pretty fun. But besides that, my annual plug, I really think I'm very interested and will be very closely watching what they're doing with Hypershield, right? I think that is a really interesting platform that has a lot of potential. I'm very interested to see where it kind of plays out with the rest of Cisco's core security story, particularly products like Identity Services Engine, right? Which is their kind of I don't want to say traditional NAC because it does do a lot more than a traditional NAC, but their NAC.1x macro micro seg product. I'm really interested to see where it kind of plays with that part of the story and how that sort of evolves over the next couple of quarters, which is really what they were, alluding to a lot of in the messaging they're coming out with. I'm very interested to see, obviously, kind of where things go with Splunk. And particularly, there wasn't a lot of chatter about it. I'm also, in the back of my mind, pretty interested to kind of see how the partnership between Cisco and Nutanix develops over the next year or so. So I think, I think
Yeah.
there'll be some interesting stuff there. And I'm yeah, I kind of can't wait to see how they continue to grow this story and watch these AI assistants that they're building. If you look, they really built one in kind of every avenue, right? There's AI for AppD, there's AI for Thousand Eyes, there's AI for security, etc. So I'm interested to see how these kind of build up and improve, and it becomes this sort of cyclical thing where they improve each other over time and all this other sort of stuff. So definitely going to be keeping an eye on a lot of those things over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I think that for me, my takeaway was the visibility, the openness. There seemed to be a lot of trying to simplify everything. Again, Meraki Catalyst coming together. I spent a little bit of time in the licensing thing, in how they're really trying to come together and make that a lot easier. Most of the subscription products now are in the 3 categories, right? Essentials, Advantage, and Premier, which is a really great way to help customers consume it and consume it at the right level. And then, to your point, a lot of the technologies embracing some form of AI to increase their efficiency with the workflows, I thought was really good from that. Everything about it was amazing. I'm looking over to see what we have in there. Doesn't look like much for questions. So it looks like we covered everything that we wanted to cover on this from this aspect of it. One of the things I do want to wrap up with, anything that we talked about today. If you go to the Cisco Live website, there is a lot of content up there for on demand, so different sessions. And a lot of the folks that gave the sessions, Gerard mentioned Catherine McNamara, Aaron Woolen, Nick Kelly. There's a bunch of folks up there that have been at Cisco a long time that put their presentations up there, and they get right to the meat of it. There's not a lot of marketing fluff in there. So go to the Cisco Live website, download, any of the sessions and review them. I think you'll get a lot of great takeaways from that.
No question. There's a ton of great content out there. Consume all that you can.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
yeah, where can we find Matt? Where can we find you on LinkedIn, social media, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I do have a Twitter account that I use pretty sporadically. So usually when if I'm chatting at all, I'm on LinkedIn. I do have a blog, ccietbd.com. I should change it from TBD because I'm not TBD anymore. But
no, that's your. I would keep it there because you got more to go.
I look at it like it's not now. Now the blog's not for me. I'm not the TBD, but somebody else is. So maybe it'll help somebody. But anyway, that's pretty much where I'm chatting or posting technical articles at this point.
And Gerard, we know you have your media empire, but tell people where we can find you.
one brick at a time, man. One brick at a time. No, you can find me at Gerard Cavalinas on Twitter, or at GCavalinas, Gerard Cavalinas on LinkedIn, wherever books are sold. I've been definitely finally releasing a lot more short form content, long form. So at the YouTube channel, Tech House Media, you can find me anywhere. I'm all over. Anytime anybody has questions, just reach out to me. I'm around.
That's awesome. And everybody can find me on LinkedIn and all the social medias. Mine's simple, Rick Beaupre. That's it for today. Rachel, any last thoughts on here?
No, Rick, I think you guys covered a lot. This was a really, really great chat. Thank you for Matt and Gerard, and obviously Rick, for joining us today and just sharing your insights from Cisco Live. I will be sending along a follow-up email as always with the recording, and you didn't have to follow along with all of their URLs. I will send those as well, so you can connect with Matt or Gerard or Rick on LinkedIn or any of the sites that they suggest as well. And I'll also send over that Cisco link that you were discussing as well, so you can do the on-demand sessions. So yeah, that's really it. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And feel free to send along any other questions you have. I'll get those over to Rick, Matt, or Gerard for you. And we'll see you guys again soon.
Yeah, have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks everybody.
See you, everyone.